All right, welcome back or welcome for the first time to Virtual Pathfinders. Like I said, we're going to record this session so that we can share it with others. So if you find the information that you learned today valuable and you would like to share it with others in the bleeding disorder community, there will be a link for you to do that, and please do. Pathfinders is a new GutMonkey program that includes GutMonkey staff with boots on the ground programming at local chapter events. We're doing 5 this year. So reach out to your local chapter to see if it's available in your area. And participants will build new competencies around hiking and spending time outdoors. That part of the program was inspired by Backpacks and Bleeders, which was in part started by Chris Bombardier in his home state of Colorado. And that is still helping people to get outside and move their bodies in various ways. We're excited to see some of you and spend some time on the trail together at a local chapter event. I know some people here either already have or are going to be participating in that event. The second part of Pathfinders is this. It's the virtual series to help build outdoor skills for people in the bleeding disorder community across the US, but from the comfort of your own home. The topic of today's session is looking at next steps and getting into backpacking. So our first 3 sessions were all about hiking and day hikes and day trips. And this one is going to venture into the 201 version of this series, which is backpacking and potentially spending the night outside. We'd like to take a moment and say a sincere thank you to Sanofi for their exclusive sponsorship of this program. Sanofi wants people in the bleeding disorder community to have access to ways to move their body and stay active that are enjoyable and can meet the needs of people at various mobility and experience levels. Due to scheduling challenges, I don't think we have anyone here from Sanofi tonight, but we do want to, again, share our thanks to their support and commitment to the community. So again, thank you so much to Sanofi for sponsoring this event. We really appreciate it and excited to get started. So who are we? GutMonkey is a mission-based adventure education company through outdoor and adventure-based programming. GutMonkey's mission is to provide foundational, life-changing experience for folks with chronic health conditions that improve health outcomes, build communities, dismantle stigma, and increase awareness. GutMonkey has been running programming in the bleeding disorder community for 17 years, providing engaging and unique programming like Pathfinders. Through all of this programming, we'd like to start with agreements. So we're going to ask that while we're here together, we all agree to the following. Pretty simple, but we like to start it off this way. Be brave. We'll ask you to lean into things that might be challenging and be vulnerable if the opportunity arises. Be excellent to each other. Let's take care of each other. Be open to the wonderful, unique differences that we all bring and be respectful. One of my favorite things about this program is the connections that happen in the chat. So in the spirit of this agreement of being excellent to each other, keep that in mind as we're chatting about gear or ideas or locations or things like that when we're getting into things about backpacking. And then do the right thing. This one is obviously up to interpretation, but when you have to make a decision, ask yourself, overall, what is the right thing to do here? And let that guide you. So we want to introduce ourselves on the call tonight. We have 2 GutMonkeys. I will start. My name is Margaret. I'm the program and operations director for GutMonkey. I will be running one of the live Pathfinders programs this year in Bozeman. I'm really excited about that. And I will pass it over to Tom.
Hey everyone, good to see you all. My name is Tom. I'm a program manager at GutMonkey, and I will have done 3 programs for Pathfinders. I've done Oregon's PNWBD's chapter event. I just got back from Southern California, where I did an event in Los Angeles, and I'm leaving this weekend to do another program down in Arizona near Prescott. So I've been having a really good time with these programs so far. So, but I'm excited to talk about these next steps in backpacking.
Awesome. Our last program of the year will actually be at the beginning of next year, and that will be with the Neha chapter near Portland, Maine. So again, if you are connected to any of those chapters and living in any of those localities, encourage you to reach out and get connected to that program. Finally, we'll ask you to take care of your needs. So feel free to keep your camera on or off, like I said at the beginning. Stay muted unless we're asking folks to share out. It just helps with some noise pollution. And also feel free to step away if you need. You're in your own home, and we know that it's nighttime and things happen in homes with families. So yeah, feel free to do what you need and take care of yourself. You know that better than us. So our agenda for the evening. We are going to begin by talking about gear. We know that this is one of the hot topics of this topic. And so we're going to dive right in and just get into it with a chat about gear. We'll move to practice before you go, the importance of being prepared before you step out the front door, picking your route, how to know how to begin to think about what type of terrain or route or distance or things like that might be good for you, especially on a trip that if you haven't done a lot of backpacking before. And then we're going to end with some tips for your first time. That's our introduction. Again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pass it over to Tom, and we're going to dive into our information about gear.
Amazing. Thanks, Margaret. Okay, so inevitably, whenever we talk about backpacking, the first thing most people want to start talking about, in my experience, is gear. People are really curious about it. The gear is an important part of backpacking. It's basically your tools to be able to perform the activity. So there's a reason why people are usually really curious or really interested in the gear. And it often is similar, but just a little bit different than your typical hiking gear. And we'll dive into like bits and pieces and all those details. But first, what I would like folks to do in the chat is take the next 30 seconds or less and write in the chat what's one thing about gear or piece of gear that you're most curious to learn more about as it relates to backpacking. It could be a topic like ultralight gear as like a general topic, or it could be a specific piece of gear like water filtration. What's one piece of backpacking equipment that you've heard about and you're now curious to learn more about? Fire starter. Yes, we will talk about fire and how to get that going. Water filtration. Yep. Never feel like you make the right choice. Well, we'll talk about that. There's multiple choices, which is awesome with water filtration. See if anything else comes through. Bug repellent, key ingredient to surviving, especially certain places in the outdoors. And two-person lightweight tents, a very specific curiosity. Med kit, amazing. Yeah, okay, so this is really good for me to know. I'm going to try and use rain gear as well. I'm going to try and do my best as we go over those pieces to spend just a teeny bit extra time on these thoughts and curiosities, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of gear that is involved in backpacking. Margaret and I have been in the outdoor world for a couple of years now, quite a few years now, and we have been backpacking for quite a while. I personally have been backpacking professionally with GutMonkey and with other companies for almost 10 years. And so some of those activities that I've done, I've been out in the wilderness for up to 28 days, just backpacking, carrying everything on my back with a group of people. And so some of the things that I might talk about throughout tonight are through experience that I've had, and some of it will be kind of like what you'll often feel that you see online as well, because there's a lot of truth to a lot of what's being put out on the internet about ways to get outside and ways to backpack. But I'm going to throw a little bit of tips as we go through, because I've done a lot, for better or for worse. Sometimes it's been for worse. And I've learned a lot from mistakes and through processes of being outside with just my backpack. And of course, there's a million ways to do things. This is one thing that I've learned from backpacking over the years. There's a million different ways. I've even seen brand new people come out and create a new way that just works better. And so I'm excited to maybe even chat a little bit about that with you all today. Okay, so let's talk about gear for a moment. Okay, one of the first things that we always talk about is the essentials. And so We talked about this in other virtual events so far, so I'm not going to like do a deep dive for this, but we are just going to quickly mention them because when you go out backpacking, these essentials in some ways are even more essential because you're living in the outdoors, and so there isn't necessarily a quick and easy way back out. So our 11 essentials: navigation. How are you navigating this wilderness space? Map and compass, GPS, etc., and having a backup for that. So having two maps, a GPS and a map. Always having at least one backup to how you plan to navigate. Next is headlamp, a source of light. You'll be living outside at this point for backpacking, so having that light at night can be very important and very helpful. You never know when you need to actually travel at night, whether that's on purpose or accident. And of course, feeding yourself. Usually you'll start cooking in the evening and things like that. So you make sure you want to have a light source with you. And headlamps are super helpful because they go straight to your head. As dorky as they may seem, it allows your hands to be free. So you can set up your tent in the dark and use both of your hands. You can set up your kitchen and have as many resources as you can available to you. You don't have to hold a flashlight. So I highly recommend a headlamp or some sort of clip-on light. I've seen people with like coat clip-on lights too that have worked. Next, sun protection, self-explanatory, sunscreen, hats, etc. First aid. I'm going to pause here for a moment because I think there's two ways you can look at first aid. One is you can always buy a pre-packed kit, and there's some pretty good ones out there these days that are made by certain companies. I recommend if you're like curious to know more about that, is actually going to like your local gear shop, whether that's your REI or something that's not as big of a chain, but is a local outdoor store, and ask them about what they think would be a good if you want to buy a pre-packaged first aid kit, because they all come with slightly different stuff. Some are very waterproof, some are not. So you just kind of want to know that information based on like where you are and what's the likelihood of you needing those items and products. And the second option is you can always build your own. If you are going to go build your own, highly recommend looking at the lists of pre-made ones and using those lists as maybe like the starting point and then building off of those pre-made lists. So you can make sure you don't miss anything, but you can like add or subtract certain things that is of benefit or not benefit to you. For example, I know some of the kits will provide Technu, which is like a poison ivy or poison oak wash. And if you live somewhere where poison ivy or poison oak cannot live or does not reside, like perhaps the desert, that might be something that is worth taking out or removing from your first aid kit, because your likelihood of experiencing poison oak or poison ivy is zero in somewhere like the desert. And so it might be worth getting rid of it altogether and saving a little bit of weight. So that's just one example of the first aid kit where you can get a little discerning when you build your own. Okay, moving forward, knife and gear repair. Bringing a knife, helpful. Multiple uses for it. Gear repair. Sometimes things rip, specifically a tent. We're going to talk about some of those things that can have rips and tears and how what I like to carry with me when I go backpacking in a little bit. Fire. Some way to start a fire. We talked about flint and steel. We talked about lighters. There's a video that we released recently about different ways to start fire and which ones are the most waterproof. We'll talk a little bit about fire. I like to keep it very simple when I'm backpacking, for the record, but I'll talk about that later. Shelter. Likely you'll be using a tent, but for one of the companies I worked for, we exclusively use tarps, and that is one way to reduce weight if people are curious to. I slept under tarps for 4 or 5 years, many days in the month, all year long, and it was fine. It wasn't my favorite, but I did it, and it is possible, and it is a good way to reduce weight. Extra food, extra water, and extra clothes. And finally, a treatment or a treatment plan. So those last bits, the extras, is making sure you have an additional amount that maybe you would expect to use in case of emergencies. And the last one is the treatment or treatment plan. So for folks who are affected, making sure that you either have the treatment that you might need in the case where you need to treat yourself for your bleeding disorder. And if you're someone who doesn't necessarily have responsive treatment based on whatever plan you are currently on. Having a plan for if something does go wrong, that if perhaps like you are passed out or you are unconscious, that the plan is written so that someone can help. That like, oh, okay, this person has these things. I've found this person, or I'm hiking with this person, and here's the finer details that maybe they have it memorized if they're like your friend, that they can pass on to an EMT or they can pass on to a first responder to best help you. So having a treatment plan printed or handwritten and folded up and put somewhere in your pack can really go a long way. For instance, as an example, I'm allergic to bees. And so one thing that I always carry with me is obviously an EpiPen. But I also carry a treatment plan that's mostly just a fair warning that I'm allergic to bees. So if someone does come across an unconscious Tom, they can maybe start deducing that maybe that's the reason why, and then can move forward in helping me if I'm unable to respond or assist in my own care. Having a clear treatment plan can go a long way in keeping you okay out there. Okay, 11 essentials. Let's dive deeper. What else? We bring our 11 essentials. We're going to always bring them, but that doesn't mean that we're comfortable or as prepared as we could be for something like backpacking. These types of shots, these like overview shots, are really cool. You'll see them on the internet a lot. It's a really fun way to look at what people bring out there. And this one is between two people. You can see that there's two different backpacks here. And it's really, I'm always really curious to see like, what do other people bring? It really, I don't know, I'm just always curious, like what people are willing to carry and what people aren't willing to carry. And as you can see from this picture, there's multiple, if not all of the 11 essentials here. It's almost like we could play that game where it's like spot the items and like circle them like on the back of a cereal box. And I bet you we could find at least 8 of them, but we're not going to do that here. But I'm sure that there's 8 there. And some of the things we don't exactly know what they are because they're inside bags, but you get the idea. So talking about backpacking gear, I like to break it down when you're preparing and you're like going through like a checklist of like my packing list. I like to break it down into 4 key categories for myself. Number 1 is the backpacking gear. What is the physical gear that is touching you while you're doing the activity? Like your backpack, like your boots, like what is physically on you and that allows you to do the physical activity of hiking with a backpack on all day long. Number 2, sleep systems. How are you going to fall asleep? What are you using to sleep in the woods? Number 3, food and kitchen. How are you nourishing yourself? And what are you going to do to make that nourishment perhaps better through a kitchen or some sort of cooking process? And number 4 is, some people call it emergency. I like to call it the just in case gear because some of the equipment that I put under this category for myself isn't always necessarily emergent, but it's like a just in case, the things that arise type of equipment. So that includes things like navigation, emergency stuff like first aid kits, or things you just want to have on hand just in case. So these are the 4 key categories. We're going to go through those categories one by one. And I recommend kind of like finding a way or using this system when you're packing, and it can help you avoid missing items when you're looking to pack up for a backpacking trip. Okay, the backpacking gear. This photo is my own equipment. So this is the stuff that I consider when I bring out there. And so other people might have different ideas or different thought processes. So under the backpacking gear, first is the backpack. And what I recommend for the backpacking backpack is when you go out to shop for one, or you're looking to use one, or you're borrowing one, is look for a backpack that is the right size for you. It's like clothes. They sell them in different sizes. There's smalls, there's mediums, there's larges. And so making sure that the backpack is going to fit your body is really important. Backpacking can be an extremely uncomfortable activity. It can be really painful activity at times. And the backpack fitting you is often the key element to what is causing pain or discomfort, is truly the fit. Once you have a backpack that fits you and you know the size is correct, then there's the next level of fitting it specifically to your body. There's a lot of different straps and Velcro bits and bobs that move and shift around that backpack. And I really recommend, because it's really hard to do it over Zoom, is no matter where you purchase your backpack from, whether you order it online or not, take it to a gear shop and ask them to help them fit it to you. Having someone help you fit it can be really helpful. Partially, they can get all the way around you and circle you a little bit like a fashion show, and see maybe where like things that you can't see are happening, that maybe it's sagging on one side or it's a little too high in one area that maybe you can't see even in the mirror. And I just really think that those items or having someone to help you fit the backpack can go a long way. I would spend, when I did programs with teens and took them out backpacking, this was like where I would stop and spend as much time possible before stepping on the trail, was making sure every student's backpack fit their body as best as we could make it fit. Because I knew if we didn't spend the time doing this, someone would be in pain and it would slow us down later, and also it's just like not very fun. Someone out there is going to have a really bad time backpacking while others are having fun. So for me, sizing your backpack and fitting it to your body, highly recommend. I could like literally talk about this. If we did a whole session just on this, we would be doing the right thing, because truly getting a backpack that fits is really key. Okay, step off my soapbox for just a moment there. I really think it's a key element to backpacking. There's a lot of things out there that's information about what type of backpack to use. For weekend trips, they'll talk about liters and sizes of backpacks. The one I typically use for almost everything I've ever done is this 65-liter backpack, and I've been able to take it on very long trips, and it's been perfect for very short trips. So for me, it works really well. It could be a really great starting point or a catch-all backpack for a lot of people, is around that 65-liter mark. Just a heads up, people definitely go smaller and do longer trips than me, and people definitely go bigger and do shorter trips than me. So it's truly up to you, but I think that's a really good like sweet spot that I've experienced as very doable for me. Okay, any thoughts, questions, or comments in the chat? Ooh, yeah, chatting with other people about reviews of equipment and brands. I definitely think that's like a really great way to like learn more about different types of backpacks and the brands and which ones do what and whatnot. Is that an entrenching tool? I think you are asking about those poles, is what I'm imagining. And those poles are just trekking poles, but they're all like they like fold up so they can get kind of small. And we're going to talk about those in a moment. Yes, backpacks are really important. Thanks for bringing that up, Amina. Yeah, I think they really are. And I don't mean to put that in a way where you need the most fanciest, best backpack, most expensive backpack in the world. I really don't mean that at all, or the most ultralight backpack. So I do want to make a quick clarification there. But what I do mean is like a good backpack for you. It can be cheap, and it can be a hand-me-down, and it can be older. Just making sure that it fits you is really the key. Okay, moving forward. Footwear, the next most important thing. And for me, footwear is really key, making sure you have some sort of footwear that is comfortable for you. Some people really love hiking boots. Some people don't. I'm a non-hiking boot person, even though this is my picture of hiking boots. I'm a trail runner person. I only like wearing trail runner shoes. It makes my feet feel better at the end of the day. But some people, for the ankle support, really love the high top boot. And so like that might take a little bit of time to figure out along the way. And so I always recommend going for the most protective gear and maybe working your way to the least protective gear. So start with a high top boot. And if that doesn't work for you, then maybe dial it back a little bit. And you can go with a low top boot, or then a trail runner, or then a sneaker. And I've seen people hike in sandals, but I don't recommend that one. Also, socks go a long way. Making sure you have a solid pair of wool socks can be really comfortable for you on your feet. And the last thing, I put this little squiggles next to it, is beware of brand new footwear. I really, really recommend that Make sure you use your boots or your shoes or your footwear before you take it out for your first backpacking trip. I've seen lots of kids and students come out with brand new boots because they're excited to go on their first backpacking trip, and it just shreds their feet into these messes of blisters. And so I really, really recommend people avoid using brand new footwear on their first trip. At least take the time to really break it in. Wear it around to like everything you do for the first week or two. Awesome. Clothes and layers. For me, this is the where the things get carried away for people and where the weight can get a little out of control. So for me, I like to know exactly what I plan to wear the entire trip. And if you need to change clothes every day, that's your prerogative. But make sure you bring exactly those items and only those items that you're going to wear each day, instead of being in this like wishy-washy, like, well, I might want these shorts and I might want that bathing suit and I might want this t-shirt. Pre-pick your outfits, put them in your bag, and call it a day. I like to create a pack of clothes that's my backpacking clothes, and those I'll wear every single day of my backpacking trip, no matter the length. I've gone on 28 days, and I've worn the same pair of shorts, shirt, and underwear for the whole 20 days when I'm backpacking. Not for everyone, but it worked for me in keeping my weight down. So, but not for everyone. So I get that, but make sure you know exactly what you're bringing, and it has a specific use. Last, supportive equipment. Ooh, I went too far. Supportive equipment. Here I have trekking poles. They're a great help for going up and down elevation or even flatland. Can be helpful for just giving you support in those places where you're feeling a little uneasy. Supportive equipment can also be things like ankle braces or taping your ankles every day, but just knowing what works for you and bringing it along. Sleep systems, another really important category. I'm going to move a little more quickly through these ones. For me, how I mentioned, I have a set of backpacking clothes that I wear every single day when I go out. I also have a pair of sleep clothes that are different. What I like to do with my sleep clothes, I like to call them sacred clothes, is they never leave my backpack until I'm sleeping. And so those actually just live directly in my sleeping bag, and I'll pack it up with my sleeping bag every single day. And those clothes, my sleep clothes, stay in my sleeping bag until I'm ready to sleep again. That includes socks, shorts, shirt, whatever I'm going to sleep in. I keep it as my sleep clothes. And it's a great way to, again, I have a key, clear use for those clothes. And so, again, keeps my weight down. Sleeping pad. This is where people I feel like first backpackers make the biggest mistake is they forget or they assume they don't need a sleeping pad. This is a massive mistake. I was just talking to someone recently who's like, I forgot it. And I said, I'll be fine. It's not that cold. Doesn't matter what the temperature is. Something happens out there in the world on our earth where the ground just really sucks all the warmth out of your body and you are freezing cold no matter what the temperature is. If you're laying, even with a tent in between you and the ground, even the tent is not thick enough. You need to have a sleeping pad if you want to get any sort of amount of sleep out there. So please, if you forget your sleeping pad, this is like for me, an absolute no-go. I will not backpack without a sleeping pad. Doesn't need to be anything fancy, but you need some sort of like appropriate pad to go underneath you. They sell inflatable ones, they sell foam ones. For the longest time, I only used foam ones. They worked great for me. I now have this inflatable one here, and that little orange stuff sack that you can see next to it is how small it packs up. So I really appreciate how small it can get. Sleeping bag. Making sure that the temperature, all sleeping bags are rated to a temperature. You can buy a 20-degree bag, a 0-degree bag, a 30-degree bag, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They'll have a degree next to them. Making sure that your sleeping bag is the proper degree for what you might be sleeping in. And I always recommend going a little bit more, slightly more extreme than what you expect. So if your weather's going to be in the 40s at night, I would go with a 30-degree bag. Or if your weather's going to be in the 30s, I would go with a 20-degree bag. Always go slightly more extreme to make sure that you are warm enough throughout the night. Because you can always just like unzip a little to get a little cooler. So that's my recommendation for sleeping bags. Next, head support. They, when I first started backpacking, I think these existed, but I didn't really know anything about them. So I often slept without any sort of camp pillow, but now they create these cool inflatable camp pillows that are quite comfortable. But I've also have used a fleece, a sweatshirt, stuffed all my clothes into a bag and slept on that as a pillow. I'm a type of person who absolutely needs something to support my head. So figure out a system that works for you. And lastly is a tent. That is going to be your shelter out there. I mentioned I used tarps before. You can do that. I do really recommend, if you're going to consider using a tarp as your sleeping system, to go out and car camp with it first. Get to see how it feels. Also, make sure you're camping in a place where you can set up a tarp appropriately. There's no trees. You're going to need to use your trekking poles to set it up. I've done it, but it's not very fun. So just know like where you're going, what you're going to use, and make sure you have some sort of shelter for you. For the tents, I talk about not too big and not too small for tents. When you bring them out, you want them sizable enough that you and whoever else is sleeping in them can fit, but not too so not too small. But you don't want to go too big. I wouldn't personally. I wouldn't carry a tent. They rate them by people, so number of people sleeping in them. I wouldn't go anything really bigger than one additional person to who I'm going with. So I have backpacked in a pair, so two of us, and I brought a 3-person tent. Was maybe a little extreme, maybe had a little too much room, but I would never backpack with a 4-person tent in that situation. That's at that point for me, it's a lot of extra weight that I'm unwilling to carry along with me. So again, not too big and not too small, and you can kind of figure out what works for you. Ooh, 2 people and a dog. Depends on the dog. It depends on you. I personally would add a person to my tent. So if it's me, someone, and a dog, I would bring a 3-person and just manage that weight in a way that works for me. But that's because I have a decently, like, she's like a medium to large dog. So and she is grumpy, a grumpy sleeper, and so she does not like to be touched when we're sleeping. So I would make sure that I had the extra space for her to have her own area. Okay, yellow lab, yeah. So a fair sized dog. If your dog is like a big cuddler and like you are gonna sleep and cuddle with your dog the whole time, and you know that, you might be able to get away with a 2-person tent. But on those like hot nights, it might be worth having that 3-person. So that's what I would recommend. I've always, when I brought a dog, brought an extra space for them in the tent as well. It just makes us all a little bit more comfortable. But I won't say it's impossible to do 2-person tent with a dog. But it may not be. Yeah, depends on you. Depends on the dog. Awesome. Ooh, the 2-person REI backpacking tent. Yes. Ooh, and it's truly lightweight. Awesome. Yeah, the REI branded gear is a really great option. It's kind of like your store brand gear. So it gets like store brand prices, kind of like the grocery store. So it's cheaper and is truly quite fantastic gear. It's actually like, in my opinion, often better than some of the name brand stuff. Depends on some of the equipment, but I've really enjoyed REI equipment. My personal tent, if anyone's curious in this photo, is a Kelty. Kelty also seems to be pretty affordable prices for me, and I have really enjoyed their 2-person tent. It's pretty lightweight. For me, I also do other activities with my tent, and it has really short poles. So those poles fit in really small bags as well, which has been really helpful for me. So kind of like knowing how you might use your tent can be a really great way in deciding what tent you want to bring out there. Whether, like Kevin mentioned, having a dog with you, or you're gonna just car camp with it or backpack with it. Are you gonna be able to split the tent up among other people? That can really determine how much weight of a tent you're willing to carry. And if you like go online, all tents have like some sort of weight listed in their like specification. So you can really start comparing if that's something that is like of interest to you. Like this one's 2 ounces heavier than that one. And people will really like get into that kind of weight differential. So to each their own for that. I'm not a huge like weight saver type person. I save where I can and then manage the rest is kind of how I see it. Okay, we're almost through our 4 categories, halfway through. The third is food and kitchen. So first thing is your cook system. Here, I've got a single pot. This is often what I bring out with me. It's pretty small. It's completely metal. Also, my stove here, which is pretty teeny tiny, called a pocket rocket. I really like pocket rockets for backpacking because they're super teeny tiny, they're really, really lightweight, and I've never had an issue with them in the field. So, highly recommend them, and they're very hot and they boil water very fast. So, I really like them. I like the size of them. Because they're so tiny, they can be a little fragile, but I'll talk about what I do to keep them safe in a little bit. And then the red bottles down here are the fuel for the pocket rocket. All stoves have their own fuel needs. Many use like this red fuel down here that's like pressurized, pre-pressurized fuel. Some will require a liquid fuel. So just know your stove. And again, that's something you can easily find out by just like chatting it up with someone at a gear shop when you're looking to buy a stove. Yes, so cook systems, pot, stove, and some fuel. Next is your vital kitchen items. We've got a lighter here. The pocket rocket needs a lighter to get it started. Uh, Pot grips. So this is just a metal pot with no handles or nothing. So if I want to dump water or move it, it will burn me. So some pots need these little special little pot grips. Some pots will have handles with them. So just know that. This is like a little flat can opener tool that's above the lighter. Opens cans, opens bottles, does other various kitchen things, and it's flat and is the size of a credit card. My grandma got it for me for my birthday once, and I carried it ever since. So thanks, Grandma. And then something to eat out of, which is this little mug up here. If you are going out on a longer trip, I recommend bringing like Tupperware with a lid, so you can save and have leftovers at lunch the next day, or whatever might happen if you make too much food one night. Awesome. Okay. Utensils. This is obvious. I bring these teeny tiny cutting boards and some knives, and then some utensils like a spatula, spoon, little fork thing that I can eat with or just prepare my food with. I like to bring some fresh foods out with me every once in a while. I don't always, but sometimes I like to like chop a few onions or chop a pepper or two and kind of like spice up my meal a little bit, even if I bring out some of those like pre-made meals where you just pour some hot water in. Sometimes it's fun to even just like add one thing to it to like feel like you like did a thing. That's something I like to do. But if like you're like, I don't need that, I'm gonna just boil water, pour it in that pouch, shake it up, and make it my meal. All the power to you. Those are really awesome. They're super high in calories. So those are really awesome too. And you can reduce some weight by not needing things like this cutting board or those knives. Awesome. Next, cleaning. So at the end of my meals, I like to clean my stuff. I like to clean my pot, like to clean my bowl or my what I'm eating out of. And so I bring some small amounts of like camp suds. So it's biodegradable soap. I bring out some hand sanitizer so I can clean my hands before eating. And then I usually cut up a sponge into quarters and bring a quarter of a sponge out to help clean my pots and pans, not carry too much stuff. And then that thing up at the top of this row where it says aqua tabs, if you can read that, that is a way to purify water. We had some questions about purifying water. So I'll pause here to talk about it quickly. Purifying your water is very important out in a backpacking trip. And I really encourage people to look up the best practices for the area. Certain areas will request people to purify their water in different ways. For instance, in the Mid-Atlantic and the East Coast, which is where I spent a lot of my time backpacking, is they request that, or it's really suggested that you purify your water 2 times. So that means pumping water through a filter. You can buy filters out at gear shops. And then after you pump the water, to then chemically treat it. You can chemically treat with iodine or chlorine. The aqua tabs here in this photo are a chlorine chemical treatment. I've used a lot of iodine in the past. The benefits of chlorine is it has less of a change in taste, but is typically more expensive. And iodine is typically quite cheap, but definitely changes the taste of your water, which can also affect maybe even your cooking. So in certain places, they recommend purifying twice. A third way you can purify your water is to bring your water to a complete and roaring boil. I mentioned the other two methods first because often you don't really want to drink boiled water too soon. It's quite hot. If you're backpacking with like a hot bottle of water, it can be just not very pleasant. So I'll bring those two things if I need them. But if you're cooking, often what I would do is pump my water into the pot and then bring that water to a boil. And that's my two forms of purification. So pump, boil. Again, that's for a specific area, the mid-Atlantic on the East Coast, where you need two forms of purification, but not everywhere needs that. In a lot of other places, you only need to purify your water one single time. And so that can be any of those methods, and your water can be purified. You can just use the chlorine tabs, you can just use the iodine, or you can just pump your water. So make your choices around that and like what works for you. I'm a big fan of the chemical treatments because they often come in really, really tiny packets or in small amounts that go a long way. You can bring a very, very teeny tiny bottle of iodine and purify gallons and gallons and gallons of water. And all you have to do is wait. Whereas pumping water, you have to bring a larger item with you and you have to pump the water. And it's instantly drinkable, but it is laborious, I will say, especially if you're pumping a lot of water for a lot of people. And so there you have it. That's water purification for folks who are curious about that. And yeah, and then for back to food, for when I cook, my purification, especially if it's single purification, I just boil that sucker so I don't have to waste any chemicals. Boil my water and then start cooking. Awesome. Okay, that's category 3. Oh yeah. Okay, so in addition to food, I added this picture because I think it's important to know that once you have food left over or food that you're still using for the rest of the trip, is a way to store it at night. In this picture, this is called a bear canister, and in certain places, that is the required use of how to put your food away, especially in the West. It's bear canisters basically only for a lot of places. You can't do it in other methods. So my point around this is just making sure that you look it up, find out the information for your local park or local area that you're going to be backpacking in, and understand what is the best system for storing your food. Again, this is a bear can. This is what is used in certain places. But other places, you can just like hang a string that's like shoulder height, and it's called a critter line, and then tie little bags of food along the critter line. So, and that is a totally a-okay process in certain places. So just wanted to mention that there's different ways to store your food and just know for your area. And the bear cans are just kind of cool, but they are limiting and they're frustrating to use sometimes. But yeah, so that's just a picture of a bear can if you've never seen one. Okay, last category is our just in case. We talked about our essentials. You can see them here in this picture. All the essentials are there. There's different ones among here that include all of the things in those essentials. The one that I said I would pause at and talk about is down at towards the bottom above my EpiPen is a repair. It says repair tape on the package. Highly recommend carrying out this like repair tape is often what it's called in stores, or I'm trying to think of other names that they sometimes will call it. I can't remember, but it's basically like a tech tape that you can cut out, and it works just like a sticker. And wherever you have a tear or a rip or a hole, whether that's your tent or your jacket, you can just cut out that little hole size from this tape, peel off the back like a sticker, and stick it right onto your product. I have stuff on my jacket that has been there for maybe 10 years from this type of repair tape and has never come off, even in the wash. I've thrown that jacket in the wash several times, and that tape has never come off. So these types of repair tapes that they sell at gear shops, lifesavers. Get a little tear in your tent, pop that on. Get a little tear in your jacket, pop a little piece of tape on. And it goes a really long way. It won't save your tent from a human-sized gash, but it'll repair a lot of like the typical small tears that might happen. If you get something like that in your rainfly, a huge gash, it might be time to turn around. That might be hard to come back from in the field. That is, you can maybe repair it at home, through sewing and other means, but it'll be pretty hard to repair that out in the field. The other just in case is water, and not just water, but your extra water, making sure you have a plan and enough bottles to carry your water throughout the duration between your water sources. So just knowing about that. How much water do you need to carry with you? Are there water sources available to you? So just knowing about how much water you need. A bathroom system. So bathroom systems are changing. So I'm not going to speak about everywhere in the world because they're changing, and they're changing rapidly about what you can do and how you can use the bathroom in the woods. A lot of things are going towards carrying your waste out. And so they're going towards needing to use certain specific types of bags to carry your waste out, specifically solid waste, not necessarily liquid waste. And so just know the area, know what's being requested, and bring what you need. I always carry toilet paper with me, even if I know there's bathrooms somehow along the entire route with toilet paper in them. I'll bring extra just in case, because sometimes you show up and they're out. So make sure you bring what you need for your bathroom system. Your personals. This includes your wallet, a little bit of cash, your keys, an ID, a phone or something like that. In this photo, I just used a camera because my phone was my camera for the picture. But your phone, and then I also put some entertainment there. I always bring like one deck of cards and a couple of dice for some games, especially on like days where we're waiting out the rain, maybe for a couple of hours. I'll bring a little bit of entertainment. What I recommend for entertainment is pick one and only bring one. Don't bring 4 books and cards and a board game and a guitar and a frisbee. Like, kind of pick one piece of entertainment or maybe 2 pieces of entertainment and just bring those. And if you have really great weather and like no hangups, you might not even like touch what you bring for entertainment because you're just backpacking and enjoying the space. And then lastly is layers and rain. So I mentioned before how I talked about I don't bring a ton of different outfits out with me, and I implore people to do similar maybe thinking and to think about layers, not outfits when they pack. So instead of bringing the heaviest jacket in the world with you, thinking about for those cold temperatures, thinking about how you can layer towards that cold temperature. So you add a layer every time you're feeling it just a little bit chilly until your body is satiated with the warmth, instead of huge jacket and a t-shirt and just a huge jacket. I think layers can go a really long way, and they often offer multiple uses in different types of temperatures. And so there's this picture of like kind of like what people will how they'll typically maybe layer to their coldest. So in this picture, you see there's like a very light, what people call a base layer. It's pretty thin, pretty simple material. A mid layer, which is this like maybe perhaps blue fleece. Then an insulation layer, which is like your puffy jacket. And I recommend puffies because they're lightweight, super packable. And then finally, an outer layer, which here is a rain jacket or some sort of shell. This is truly, for most scenarios in cold, all you'll ever need to stay warm enough out there. Something about the way these fabrics layer can keep you extremely warm, especially that insulation layer to shell moment. You'd be surprised at like, oh, it's such a tiny little rain jacket, how much heat that little rain jacket can trap in there for you. So again, think layers, not outfits, in my opinion, when it comes to backpacking. Okay, someone asked, how do we pack our backpacks? So I've got a little diagram here about weight and weight distribution. We'll be talking about weight this whole time, how to keep things lighter, ways to maybe choose things and not choose things. And I really like this diagram because it sections the backpack into a few different components that I find very important, in my opinion. Now, not all backpacks will look exactly like this one. You might have an older type of frame that might look a little bit different or have a different shape, but generally the concepts remain. So number 1, which is this orange section at the bottom, is where you keep your midweight items. Midweight items include things like sleeping bag, sleeping pad, anything that like, and for me, if you don't have like a zipper at the bottom, things I want last in the day. Mine has a zipper pocket at the bottom, which is amazing. So I can get out my backpack or my sleeping bag whenever I want. But if you have one of those that do not have that, I put the things at the end of my day at the bottom. And hopefully they're all mid-weight. Number 2 is your heavyweight items. Heavyweight stuff can be things like if you have to carry a bunch of water with you, or you have a big hydration bladder with a hose thing going on, getting that closer to your back, and kind of mid back, not low back, not high back, but mid back for you. That often is where this red space is for people, especially if you've gotten your backpack fitted well for you. So heavier items there. 3 is going to be your lightest items. People often put things like tent poles out on in this 3 zone or this blue zone. People will put things like pillows, that just like their lightweight clothes, maybe their layers that they want to access quickly. I call it like a kangaroo pouch. Often backpacks will have like a very exposed pouch on the outer area there, and where the blue part is, and I'll put like things like my next level layers, whatever I haven't worn yet, out there. And then last 4 is up here in the brain of the pack, people call it, is all your lightest items. And often there's a zipper up here. So this is like your easy access, quick access stuff. So snacks, lighters, first aid kit, treatment or treatment plan. I always keep my EpiPen up there. Small, yeah, just all your tiny little bits and bobs and quick access stuff. So rain gear if rain comes in, et cetera, et cetera. So 4, this brain area is your important area and your quick gets. Yes, how do you pack your food and utensils? Great question. I forgot to mention it. So if we go back to our food, okay, so if we go back to this picture, what I love about all of the items that I've chosen here is all of this fits into that little silver pot right there. All of it. None of it is outside of the pot when I go to pack this equipment. So for me, except the fuel bottles don't fit. Sorry, that's not totally true. Everything else does fit though. So the stove fits in there, the mug, the lighters, the pot grips, the utensils, everything goes right into that pot. I pop the lid onto that pot. And then in terms of where does it go in my backpack, that pot tends to get kind of heavy for me because there's so many items in it. And even though they're small, they can start adding up in weight. But everything fits into that little pot, including the fuel. And so where I'll put that, we'll go to our diagram here, is I'll put my pot in this 2 zone, in that heavy zone for me. 2 zone is for me is often my food, my pots, my pans, and water. Often the 2 for me, the 2 zone is all edible stuff. So that's how I kind of, because usually that stuff tends to be the heaviest. And so that's what I put in this 2 zone in my pack, close to my back and in the middle part of my back. Amazing question. Okay. Whew. Any other thoughts? Question? Awesome. Okay. We're getting closer to the end of time here. So I'm going to go through a couple things, but I'm going to go through them a little quick. One is once you have all your equipment and you're ready and you feel prepared, I really recommend people practicing before they go. Practice everything. Sleep outside with your backpacking stuff, but don't go backpacking. Just go car camping or just go sleep in your backyard and use your backpacking equipment for it. Next, fire basics. Give fire making a try. Do it in your own backyard, in a grill, or in a fire pit, somewhere where if things go wrong, you'll be okay. Food planning and cooking on your stove. Cook at home on your stove for the first few times. Go car camping and cook on your backpacking stove for the first few times. Really stick to not going out backpacking just yet. Setting up and using all your gear. Use your rain jacket. Set up your backpacking tent instead of sleeping in your very cush, giant car camping tent. And same thing with map, compass, and trail navigation. Go on some hikes. Try and use your maps and compasses. And do all this stuff before you're actually backpacking. Truly practice all this stuff before your first time. 3, picking your backpacking route. We talked about this in other sessions, so I'm just gonna again quickly go through it. We had a hiking triangle that we offered. There's 3 key components to it in each corner. What are you interested in doing? What are you comfortable doing? And what is available to you? When you find the perfect intersection of all 3 of those things, that will often be a really great choice for picking your route. And so for me, like really thinking about all 3 of these questions can go a long way in making sure that the hike you go on is really comfortable and adequate for you. Some additional things to consider: HTC and treatment options. Calling maybe the HTC if you're going far away from home and letting them know that you'll be in the area. Knowing all your water sources on the trail. Do you need to bring your own drinking water, or where are the water sources along the trail and how long are they apart from one another? Things about camping specifics. Do you have to camp on specific designated areas, or can you disperse camp, which means camp anywhere in the woods? Knowing those specifics can help you decide how you are going to backpack. Most places require designated camping. There are plenty of places that don't, but most have better amenities at those designated areas anyway. So recommend considering that. And then other regional considerations like weather, plant life, animal life, and people. And with that comes with, like, again, the bear can thing, or a critter line, or the poison ivy thing we mentioned earlier, or in terms of like people in the area that you're on, what types of permits or permissions do you need? Oh, beware of using synthetic fabric dryland as a fire starter. Yes. Thank you, Kevin. That is a good point. A lot of people use different types of things that they've read online, and maybe will use kind of things that aren't quite the right thing that maybe they mentioned online. So like that synthetic stuff when it comes to fire starter can get kind of nasty. Oh, do you recommend guided hikes when you're beginning? I say absolutely. If that is something that will make you more comfortable for your first time, I say absolutely go on a guided backpacking trip. And if you can't find necessarily like, or you don't want to spend the money on something that is fully guided, perhaps find someone in your life who is really excited about backpacking, who has some knowledge to impart. There's a lot of ways to find people to help with that. There's also like not just paid guided experiences, but there's also groups or events where you can like go and have someone somewhat of an expert quote unquote guide, but perhaps it's free because it's part of like for instance, like I know that there's like a women's backpacking group in the Pacific Northwest, and they'll just kind of get together as a group and bring new people out. And that's a really great way for folks to just go out and try something for the first time. So you can also just find like specific groups where there are experts among the group to show you around. Another question is just a question. Are there any stores when you go backpacking? Oh, yeah, very good question. Okay, so I love that question because the answer is maybe, which I love when the answers are maybe when it comes to backpacking. So I spent a lot of time when I was backpacking on the East Coast on the Appalachian Trail. And so the answer for there is absolutely. We passed stores sometimes multiple times a day, not everywhere on the Appalachian Trail, but especially in that mid-Atlantic region, that Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania region. There's oftentimes where the trail crosses a major road and there's like gas stations nearby, there's other stores nearby, and that's really good information to know before you go. So again, when you're looking at new trails and new options, perhaps that's something you consider. Like, am I going to cross a road? And if I cross a road, is there going to be a store there? Because if I do, that's a great option for me. It's a great option in different ways. There are great options around food. You can buy new food. So maybe you don't have to carry everything on your back, but make sure that that store carries the food that you might need. And two, it could be a good option for emergencies. You can use that store for a phone or access to getting a message out to someone or taking refuge during a storm. So yes, there are stores sometimes along the way, but not always. So if you're going out to more remote places, the likelihood is very, very low, but there are places where you definitely can. And distance plays a pretty big role in that. So considering that like sometimes even if there's a store on your route, that store might be far too in the distance for that day that you might need it. So making sure that you consider where that store might land. Awesome. Oh, awesome. Great. Thanks, Margaret, for answering the question about groups in Illinois. I'm sure there are. are. I'm sure there are. Okay, we're just a little bit over time, so I'm just going to say these tips quickly. I think there's nothing really to say beyond just tips for your first time. The number one tip that I offer to people when they go out for their first time, question was asked about going with a guided group. Highly recommend going with someone who has done it before or feels like they have got good information and good knowledge around backpacking. If that is not something that's available to you, but you still want to go and you still want to give it a try, my next tip is to go with other people, even if they're beginners as well. And if you do that, the last thing I would mention is pick a route that can be completely done, start to finish, out and back to your car in a single day, no problem. A day hike. However, at halfway, there's an opportunity for camping. So picking a distance that's short enough that you can go back to your car in the same day and not have to camp, but there is a camping option for you to try it out. So hiking out to that camping spot, using that extra time, especially if you get there pretty early because the distance is so short, using that extra time to practice using some of your gear, cooking some of your food, just spending time with the people that you went with, exploring the area. Sometimes you can like set up camp and then go without a backpack and go hike to something cool like a waterfall, using the extra time for something else, attempting the sleep out. And then when it's time to go home, it's an easy hike back out. And as you do those practicing out on the trail, sometimes you'll find perhaps you forgot something, or perhaps you're missing something, or you didn't quite figure out the tent right this first time. And so if that happens, the option's now available to you to turn around and go home on that same day, and you won't have to be stuck out in a dangerous situation. So that's my final tip. If you don't go with a group that can help and support you, is to make sure that your first time out is something that can be completely done and back to your car all on the same day. Those are all of my bits of information for backpacking. Thank you all for being here. I know we are far over time, so I apologize, but it seems like folks still were curious. And so thank you for being here. If people want to know anything else about this, I love talking about it. Please email us. I'd be happy to, I'm sure Margaret would be as well, to chat it up with you all, talk about options and resources and things to do. We'd be happy to help. So please reach out to us. Also, as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to our sponsor again, Sanofi, for putting this on for us. It's been awesome to be able to have these sessions, both virtual and in person, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you all and working through these sessions. It's been really fun, so thank you to Sanofi for sponsoring these events. It's been really awesome to have this as a resource to our community. And of course, keep in touch with us. I mentioned you can email us. You can find our emails on the website, me and Margaret's, if you want to email either of us directly, or you can also keep in touch with our info@GutMonkey email. We'd be happy to chat through that as well. And before everyone goes, we are offering a prize to someone here on our session for filling out our survey. So we'll have the survey in the chat in a moment, and that person who we select will email you after this, and you will have the option or the chance to win a $100 gift card to REI. So you can maybe kick off some of this gear purchases that you might need to make for your first time out. So the link is in the chat right now. Feel free to click that link, fill out the survey. Based on who fills out the survey, we'll pick names from the submitted surveys for that $100 gift card. And if REI is a company that doesn't work for you, when we email you, just let us know. We'll find a company that will work for you. There's plenty of online options out there as well. Even if you don't have an REI near you, you can order online, or we'll find something else like backcountry.com or something like that. So awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm going to put some music on as we roll out. Feel free to sign off once you submit that survey. It's been really awesome. Margaret, would you like to say anything?
Just thanks again for joining us. This has been, like Tom said, an awesome learning opportunity for us as well. And our hope is to be able to offer virtual programs around these topics again in the future. So on the survey, one of the questions that we really value is what are you looking for in your growing knowledge of the outdoors and hiking and getting outside. So thanks again for coming. We really appreciate it. We've loved hanging out with you. Have an awesome night.
Yes, thank you all.
Have fun.
Torn down, full of aching. Somehow, our youth would take the blame.
Some good fall music.
That's what I thought.
Appreciating it.
I wish we had fall weather here.
Oh,
It's hot today. It's 77 degrees.
wow. That might be your fall. That might be the San Francisco fall.
Might be.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
What'd you say, Kevin?
I said thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks,
It's good to
Kevin.
see you.
Yeah.
I think I'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah, I will see you on Saturday.
Amazing.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Bye, Kevin.
Bye.
Thanks so much. See you later.
Hey, Amina, we're gonna. Oh, here. Oh, I will email you. I'm gonna do it right when we get off the call. So I'll email you. Right, yeah, right when we get off the call and find that info for you.
Super excited right now. So pumped
Okay,
up.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
thank-
yeah. There's lots of options in Illinois. So,
Okay, I'm looking forward. Thank you.
woohoo! Thanks, Amina.
Amazing.
Thanks for joining us on all the sessions. We really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Bye, Mina.
Bye.
See you
Bye, Tom.
later.
Bye.
Let me stop recording.